Stevens Field in Plymouth has gotten an update. We went on the local scene to the dedication of the newly restored 7-acre recreation area.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. We're about to get started. My name is Derek Brindisi. I am the town manager for the town of Plymouth, and I will be your MC this evening, or this afternoon. So a couple of things I would like to go over. Do want to recognize a few people that are in the audience here today. I do have to say there was a bet at Town Hall. The over-under was for 50 people. I lost that bet. I chose the under, so thank you all for coming out. Casey Kennedy, our communications coordinator, she bet more than 50. Thank you, Casey, for pulling this together today. Before we begin, I want to recognize State Representative Catherine Lenatra, who's here with us this afternoon. Thank you for being here. The chairman to the select board, Mr. Dick Quinto. Our vice chairman, Mr. Kevin Canty. Select board member, Charlie Bletzer. And school committee member, Michelle Badger, is in the audience somewhere. Thank you for being here today. And there's a number of other people I want to recognize, because those of you that understand the history of what we're here to celebrate today know that this celebration spans, I want to say, at least 20 years. The stories I have heard is these conversations about rebuilding this park go back to the early 2000s. So there are a number of people here who had a part of this conversation over a period of that time. Former fire chief and now chairman of the CPC committee, Chief Ed Bradley, is in the audience today. Thank you, Chief, for attending. Former fire chief Fugazi is also in attendance. And since I'm on a roll with chiefs, our current chief, Foley, is here. This is almost like a ribbon cutting for a fire station with so many chiefs here today. I also want to recognize Ted Bubbins, the former Parks and Recreation Director. Thank you for being here, Ted. And I would like to also recognize Mr. Bill Cohen here, who is the former chair of CPC. Thank you for your commitment, for everything that you've done for CPC over the years and for bringing this project forward as well. Last, I want to recognize longtime selectman sitting in the front row here, Mr. Ken Tavares, who is also with us here today. And then, only because he's hiding, Mr. David Gould, who's the director of the Department of Energy and Environment, who just came back from jury duty for the past week. A huge round of applause for David. I don't know if you realize this, but back in 2022, I think it was, David, or that time period, I went to David and I asked him if he would be willing to assist us, the DPW, our DPW to have left. I asked him if he'd be able to take on some projects, and he willingly stepped up and said that he would take on the project management of this project. But he did say, he had one note, he said, once I take it on, I'm not giving it back. So everything that happened in this project, as far as what it looks like today, is all much credit to David Gould here in the back. Thank you, David. And then last, I want to recognize Commissioner Michelle Brady, the Commissioner of Health and Human Services. Thank you, Michelle, for being here today. So like I mentioned earlier, today's event spans 20 years. Much deliberation, both at the community preservation level, with the select board over the course of that time, the Stevens Field Planning Committee. Many of you are on that committee can remember those days and having those discussions on what this park will ultimately look like. And then at the end of the day, everything goes to town meeting. So for all you town meeting members that are here today, thank you so much for appropriating those dollars to make today's project a reality. So thank you all. And just so we're clear, this was a $5.8 million project. $5.8 million was set aside, $200,000 to design it, $4.7 came from CPC, and we had to use an additional $900,000 for ARPA to bring this project home. But we're not here just to celebrate the project itself. We're also here to honor two individuals who committed so much to this community, Mr. Doug Gray and then Mr. Chet Downie. We will recognize those two individuals this afternoon as well. So I'm just the MC, so I'm going to turn the next portion of this presentation over to Selectman John Mahoney. Mr. Mahoney, as you know, has been a longtime selectman here in this community and also serves on the Community Preservation Committee.
Thank you, Derek. And thanks to everyone for coming out today. We got lucky, the weather is cooperating. Before I make a few comments about why we're here today, I just want to say that I'm of the age where I have no recollection of the Nixon or Ford administration. So for me, Jimmy Carter was my first president. And he turns 100 today. And he's the kind of individual that should set the example of how we should conduct ourselves as elected officials. So I just want to say happy birthday to Jimmy Carter. So 10 years ago, I drove up to my mother's house and I walked in the house and she handed me a photo. And in the photo, it identified it as 1948 and she was sitting on the hood of a pickup truck with an ice cream cone in her hand. And she looked at me and said, "Where am I?" And I could tell from the former curb cut that used to be over there near the duck pond that she was at Stevens Field. And I knew that immediately. So growing up in another community, I came here all the time as a child because my pediatrician was at the top of the hill, Dr. Richard Elliott, in that medical building right up there. So I have fond memories going back well over 50 years of on this property, especially that playground that used to be in the back right corner. All my siblings played there. Before or after we went to the doctors, if the weather cooperated, we knew we were going to Stevens Field. And then years after that, I came full circle, where I now live up at the top of the hill on Whiting Street. And Ed Bradley, I have no idea why you left this neighborhood. So having said that, I got involved in the community, and I started off by getting elected to town meeting. So 17 years ago, this month, fall town meeting of October of '07, the select board brought an article forward to double the acreage of the DPW annex down at the end of Camelot. And by doing that, we could divest ourselves of 3 pieces of property. And one of them was pretty much almost 3 acres right here. And town meeting stood up and said, "We don't care what you do with the other 2, but we want those 3 acres to be incorporated into a new modernized Stevens Field." And that happened. And that happened because of the leadership of my former, and at the time, future colleagues on the select board, and that's Mr. Richard Quintal, Kenneth Tavares, David Malaguti, and Mr. Butch Machado. Without them, this wouldn't have happened. My first term working with Mr. Quintal, Nelson Park was completed. On the other side, north of the downtown waterfront area. And what an extraordinary investment that was. And people have been going there for the last 14 years enjoying that park. This one came in a little bit longer. Took us a little bit more than what we thought it was going to be, but this is another jewel in the downtown waterfront area. This is an extraordinary investment, especially in a community like Plymouth, where you're an oceanfront community. We want to facilitate and allow people to come here and passively recreate and enjoy the water. So this is an extraordinary day for me. It's an honor for me to be here on behalf of the Plymouth Select Board. And the last thing I'll say is it couldn't have gotten done without the citizens of this community supporting the Community Preservation Act, passing that, and continuing to use that to invest in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I also want to recognize Police Chief Flynn, who's now in the back of the audience. Thank you, Chief, for coming out today. So our next speaker is our most junior Parks and Forestry Superintendent. As I mentioned earlier, we have two in our presence now, former Parks and Forestry Superintendents, both Doug and Teddy. But I'm going to turn the mic over to our newest Superintendent, Mr. Nick Faiella.
Thank you all. Nick Faiella, Parks and Forestry Superintendent. Doug, Teddy, half as good as you guys for my career here, so thank you guys and congratulations, Doug. Congratulations, Mr. Downie, on both of your areas today. Thank you. I also wanted to say thank you to David Gould, who's hiding back there. I worked under David in this project. He taught me a lot. Without him, this wouldn't have gotten done. I wouldn't have learned everything that I learned, so thank you to David as well. Thank you. We finally did it. So lastly, I wanted to thank everybody that's been involved in the past 2 decades in making this happen, whether it was a little design plan or blowing the sidewalks off at the end of the day. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears came from a lot of hands and a lot of people. Too many to list. I would definitely miss somebody. So I just want to say thank you to everybody. And I hope you all enjoy the park and be safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. So our next speaker is Mr. Tim Downie. As you all know, Tim is the son of Chet Downie, who, if you look to your rear here, right on Sandwich Street, is now forever will be named the Chet Downie Scenic Overlook due to Mr. Downie's years of dedication to this community, 40 years for the Girls and Boys Club, his time as a truant officer, his time managing the concessions over here at Stevens Field. So this is a great tribute to your dad and everything that he's done.
Hello. First off, no photos unless I have my shades on. I would say for those that don't know me, I am Tim Downie, but that was just said. For everyone here that does know me, hi, how are you? First, I would like everyone here to understand that this monument and plaque were not directly from the town. It was a result of a man by the name of Robert Romanoff. Mr. Romanoff owned the land that this memorial sits on now. While selling the land of the town, he took tens of thousands of dollars less for naming rights. And then when questioned what name he wanted to put it in, he said Chet Downie. That touched me more than any other award or recognition that my dad has got over the years, because Stevens Field, this area, was his favorite place in town. Now, I don't know Mr. Romanoff, but I obviously would like to know at some point exactly what Chet did that made him lose $50,000, $60,000 to put it in his name. And maybe someday I will, but I cannot thank that man enough for making me cry, actually. I've had many people come up to me over the years asking if I was Chet's kid. And when I said yes, they said, blah, 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 meaning a story about what Chet did for them. I've had guys tell me that they owe their businesses to Chet. I have other people that say they own their entire contract and businesses to Chet, all because Chet got to them early and was able to help put them on the right path. Something I don't think we see as much today as we used to. Excuse me. See, I feel the world needs more of these people, like my dad, yet less seem to show up nowadays. But you don't need to just earn the respect of the kid. You need to earn the respect of the parents as well. And Chet did that in spades. It took many years for me to slowly realize the magnitude of what Chet did. He was a very, very, very selfless man. He came from nothing. He was a Depression-era kid. And he was never really even sure if he was going to eat dinner that night. It was something he never forgot. He once said to me when I was younger, though I care about all the kids in Plymouth, in this town, I care more about the poor that can't afford a basketball. I'm aware I'll never have the understanding of what Chet did for so many, considering at the Boys Club he was the executive director from 1946 to 1992, 40 or 50 years. So generations of people have gone through the Plymouth Boys Club and know my dad, probably better than I do. This was, without a doubt, Chet's favorite place. You could come down here any season, and Chet would be sitting right behind where that black truck is, staring at the water, drinking a coffee, contemplating who knows what. He ran a lot of youth programs in town. He ran the Boys Club. He was the truant officer. But more importantly, he ran the youth programs down here in the 60s, and then took over the concession stand in the 70s up through the late 80s. In that time, he met more people, and somewhere in that time, he met Mr. Romanoff. I don't really know what to say outside of that, except I want to thank Mr. Romanoff again for putting this in my dad's name. And someday I'd love to hear the story. He seems that Chet touched a lot of people's lives over the years, and I never, ever once heard a bad word. Thank you all for listening, and if you have anything you want to tell me, maybe a story about Chet, I'll be here for a little while. And I also want to thank Plymouth for allowing this all to happen. My dad wanted this in 1975. It's now 2004. It's about right for the town. It was a joke. So thank you, Plymouth. Thank you for everything. And thank you more so to Mr. Romanoff. I'll always be proud of that rock on the hill. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. So our last speaker this afternoon is Mr. Douglas Gray. As you know, you look to my left here, the playground is in honor of you, Mr. Gray. Everything that you have done for 26 years for this community as the superintendent of parks and forestry, we appreciate you. We appreciate your years of service, and we ask you to come forward and say a few words.
Wow. Is this on? It's on. You can hear me? Oh, that's too bad. This is hard to comprehend for me. First off, I don't recognize the place.
Hold the microphone up.
Oh, okay. I don't recognize the place. Where are our old barns that were filled with pigeons and rats and things like that we used to call home here for the park department? I'm glad to see they're gone. This is a much better use. I can't say enough about the crews that work for the park department and the tree department, once that was added to us as well. Fantastic group. We didn't need anything fancy. We just needed machinery that worked so that we could get things done. I look out here now, I just don't even recognize from here up. I remember that, the ocean, but I think I know a lot of this work is a result of the committee that was formed a few years ago to put together plans and pressure to get something done down here. I would attend the meetings. I wasn't on the committee. I didn't want to be. I was there to offer any information that they didn't have about the area. And I was glad to do so because it is not the easiest area to work with, being fronting on the bay. But they did an exquisite job. I have to thank everybody involved in that. I just wonder where our old barns are now. And, you know, if the pigeons found another home. But no, it's a marvelous thing. It's something we had in mind way back, but there wasn't enough push and certainly not enough money. And I doubt that we could have done it better than what you have here today. I appreciate the name. I did have to correct the spelling, or else my mother would come back and haunt me. So, Dave, thank you for adding the S. Truly an asset to the town, always was, but now it really is. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. So we're going to move to the ribbon cutting ceremony in just 1 minute, but 2 announcements before we do that. One, after we cut the ribbon, our chairman, Mr. Quintal, has donated pizzas. They're all in the concessions if anybody wants to help themselves, so please do. And then our recreation director in the back, Ann Slusser, is organizing games over here in the field for not just children, but if any children would like to play, they're certainly more than welcome. So we're going to move to the ribbon cutting ceremony right now.
Ready?
Wait,
3.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like and subscribe button before you go. We'll see you next time.